talking about this on the previous programs before, but it's reason to bring this up again because it reflects of what is going on over here in the EU right now with the EU Constitution, the European Constitution. And again, this was thrown out by the Dutch and the French in 2005, but they renamed it. They threw out some of these most symbolic things, like they trashed the anthem, basically, that we're going to have a whole new anthem, and the flag. So they basically said, okay, the countries, they can keep their own anthems and their own flags. It's okay. But basically, the bulk of the thing was renamed to the Lisbon Treaty, and it was signed on the 13th of December in 2007 in Portugal. A highly symbolic event, by the way, but let's not go into all of that right now. But again, it just shows you that if they have this kind of agenda, they're going to bring it up again and again and again. And this is kind of a bacteria kind of way that they operate. Basically, if the people, in this case, it's the immune system, they always have to fight the bacteria, so to speak, and hold this out if this is the interest of the what the people want, basically. So this isn't going to go away or be defeated, or we're going to end up in a situation where everybody can relax again and say, oh, okay, it's good, we defeated it. This is, again, since this goes to the root of the problem, goes so much deeper, and this goes all the way up to the top and to the bottom, and people with all different agendas is on the key positions right now. I think that the people going into this also have to kind of change their own mindset and get around to the idea that this isn't something that is going to go away, not at least until we have people that are actually representing what the majority of the people want up there, right?
Yes. And it doesn't help the fact that 98 or 99% of the population is fast asleep.
Sure, exactly.
And, that helps their side get away with these things. And I always have wondered how they can bring these types of situations about without a public referendum. Because it should be left up to the citizens, not civilians, by the way, should be left to the citizens of the country to decide whether or not they join a North American Union or whether or not they become a part of a New World Order.
Mm-hmm.
But these treaties and all of this type of thing are signed in secret behind closed doors, and we never hear anything about them until after the fact. It's far too late to do anything about.
Exactly. And then we have the other side of this issue that even though people, going into a situation like this might be against it for some reason, or they have their own ideas, they have their idea of how they want to live their life and what kind of world they want to live in. But then we have the idea that the people, involved in all this, in codes with, marketing business, the whole, advertisement industry basically, also makes up a way to kind of sell this to people. So they actually, if they come to the conclusion that, okay, people inherently are against this, but let's kind of change their mentality, basically mind control them into the fact that this is a good thing for you and you actually want this. And that's a kind of an obvious kind of consequence of when people are asleep and they're not awake and they're not in touch with reality and what is going on in the world. But again, that's a tricky thing to do. And again, I guess that the only thing to kind of counteract that is the idea again that those people who are involved in the issues and know about them have to help to inform people that aren't into all of this. And basically, again, I kind of have this idea. It goes down to the idea that it's basically, it is like a war kind of type scenario, even though people don't think about it that way. And, there are no rules in that sense to what is, allowed or not allowed. So again, it's very difficult to kind of counteract that. And in the end, I think it's a clash of beliefs of how people want to live their lives or how they don't want to live their lives. What do you think, Kent? What do you make of it?
Yeah, I quite agree with all of what you just said. It's very difficult when I go to talk to somebody to try to enlighten them about the North American Union, just for one example, because that's what we're talking about at the moment. And they'll respond to me by saying things like, oh, that's not going to happen, or that's not true, or words to that effect.
Sure, yeah.
And then I'll show them, photographs of the Amero currency that they're bringing about. And I get accused of faking pictures.
Really?
Jeez. And it's just this mentality that, if it were true, it would be on the nightly news.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And all of this type of stuff, historically, never makes the news.
That's right.
So, after the fact, when everybody's holding the parade and celebrating, and yay, we did it,
Yeah.
we pulled it off.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's very frustrating.
Yeah, it is, exactly. And again, it kind of goes back to that idea of, whose is the responsibility. The way I look at it right now, the responsibility lies in the person who kind of can see it and make their own conclusions about things. But yet again, I kind of go back to that idea: is it our right to go into other people's lives and try to change it? But then instantly, as you think like that, you get to the idea of what I expressed earlier, that if the elite actually are manipulating with people and basically mind controlling them into believing that this is what they want or this is what you should think about this or whatever, I guess you also have a kind of a responsibility to kind of counteract that information, or at least give the people themselves an opportunity to being able to think clearly about a situation. And in many cases, as you say, Kent, you don't end up talking about like the issue, like the Amero, when you show them pictures or whatever, but you have to backtrack all the time. You wind up in a situation where you basically have to tell that, okay, what you see on the news it's not, the reporting in that sense. It's in many cases just the propaganda about an agenda that they want to get across. And then you go into the whole idea that you're basically trying to say to those people that, well, you are being mind controlled on these different levels. But then you end up in a situation of belief, basically, because many of these people can't see it yet, and they're frankly not awake. So I totally agree with you, Kent. It's very frustrating, and you kind of realize how far back all the time you have to backtrack, and it's frustrating. You're right, Kent.
Yeah, in fact, I have a perfect example that I would like to share with you and the listeners about how mind control plays into these types of situations. And it has to do with the home mortgage again. When I was in the process of looking to buy a house with my wife at the time, she's now my ex-wife. That's why I'm saying it that way. She had come to me and said, oh, we can't pay cash for a house. We have to have a mortgage. And I said, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Why? And she said, because everyone else has one.
Yeah, there you go.
So I said, okay, if I can make an appointment and schedule a meeting with a mortgage broker, and you and I can attend that meeting with that individual, and if I can manipulate the conversation in such a way that I can get this individual to admit in their own words that home mortgages are a complete scam and a complete rip-off, would you consent to getting the house and paying cash for it?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, this I have to see.
Yeah.
So what I did, we were arguing for like 6 weeks about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking like tooth, fang, and claw, you know.
Yeah.
Nothing physical, but just total argument.
Sure.
You know. And she was just being unreasonable about it. So I finally scheduled a meeting with the mortgage broker. We went to the meeting. I pretended like I knew nothing. And the guy basically said to us, well, you're telling me that you have enough money to pay cash for a house, you know, just a typical middle-class house. And I would like to ask you, do you like money in your pocket from month to month? And I said, yes, of course. Everybody that I know loves money. And he said, well, instead of spending all the money that you say you have, which wasn't all I had, but for the sake of the discussion, it's all he was told about.
Mm-hmm.
He said, instead of spending all your money on paying cash for this house, why don't you just put down 5%? And that way, you'll have money for vacations, and you can buy stuff for the inside of your house,
Mm-hmm.
and you could buy a new car if you wanted, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, wow, that sounds like an interesting idea. Draw up the papers. So the guy draws up the papers, and he's sitting behind his computer at his desk. We're sitting across the desk from him, and I'm looking at this guy, and he is coming off to me as like Red Riding Hood's wolf licking his chops, and I found another sucker, and we're going to make a nice bonus today, and so on and so forth. And so after he draws up the papers and prints them out on the computer, he puts them in front of me. And I said, before I sign this, I just have one question, one last question for you. And how you answer this question will determine whether or not I sign this document.
Ooh.
And he had said, okay, go ahead, shoot, what do you want to ask?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, how does my paying cash for the same house 3 times over again, how does that benefit me in any way, shape, or form? The Federal Reserve is a complete scam. I am well aware of this. And what you are doing today, sir, is you are committing fraud. You should be ashamed of yourself, because I certainly am. This guy's jaw hit the desk. I believe that the response he gave me was because he had never heard anybody do this to me before.
Sure.
And what ended up happening was, obviously, we paid cash for the house. I looked over at my wife and I said, right in front of this guy, right at his desk, I said, see, I told you, this guy